Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're so excited about our first ParaPlan webinar. My name is Kyle Archer, and with me today is Brett Kale and Tim Hibbard. And just double check to kind of make sure everybody can see our screen. We're showing ParaPlan sidebar on the left with Brett's desktop here. So we're all together. And basically, we're all very excited to have you guys for our first webinar of a series of many more to come. We've had over 30 people sign up for this thing. It's a great response for our first one, so thank you for joining us. We'll be recording this session, so we'll send a link after we're done so that you can review it later or send it to others. And basically for our schedule today, we plan to first answer some questions we got beforehand from our participants. We're going to answer those first, and Brett's going to kind of show you how those questions will be answered using the software. And feel free to ask a question either by voice or by the chat feature in the Zoom app during anything that Brett's talking about if you want clarification on anything. And after we've answered these pre-submitted questions, we plan to show you a few new tips and tricks within ParaPlan that you may not know about. And when we're doing that, also feel free to ask a question about those tips or a new question that may have popped up. So let's go ahead and get started. Tim, do you want to start with the first question?
I do. Thank you for joining. Real quickly before we get started, there is a group chat window. If you want to open up the group chat, and then you can just type in there "okay" to make sure that you can hear us and see us, and make sure that you can see the group chat so that any questions can be submitted that way. All right, great. Thank you so much, everyone. So let's get started. The first question comes from Steve in Sheridan, and he would like you to discuss the power of ParaPlan to create the most efficient schedules for routes, specifically the right-click features. Brett, do you want to speak about the powerful tools we have for scheduling in ParaPlan?
Sure thing. Okay, there's a lot of different things you can do to help be more efficient while you're scheduling. One of them would be if you have a lot of reoccurring rides, you can set permanent routes to each subscription. And what that'll do is when we build the day, it'll already be scheduled for you. So obviously the less the more that's scheduled when we first pull it up, the better off we are. So let me bring one up. All right, so we can see Miranda here has a number of subscriptions. We can, like this one's for Fridays, and if we know that, we always do this on run one, then when we select that, whenever we build a Friday, this is already going to be scheduled for us. So that can save us, a lot of time scheduling. Let's see, a second way to help with scheduling is, if you do a lot of rides that you kind of do the same thing every week, every Monday, we have the same vehicle set up or pick up the same set of clients other than the ones that canceled. I can use a build from previous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick next Monday, and I'm going to say I want to base this on this Monday. So anyone I've scheduled this Monday, I want those to go on the same routes, etc. So there's a number of options here. One would be to copy the route structure. And this is basically, however I set up my routes last Monday, I want them to come across and do the same thing this Monday. So if you remember when we first set up ParaPlan, we have kind of defaults for a route. So we might say run one always runs from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. on Mondays. If we're using this copy route structure, we're going to look what it did last, the day we built it off of, rather than what our defaults are. A second option would be to copy the driver assignments. If typically, Joe does run one every Monday, then we can copy these, and it's gonna, already have Joe assigned, and we don't have to worry about that. And then if he calls in sick or something, we can just switch him out. Copy start and end times. This is, like I said, it's going to use the, route times from the day you're building off rather than the defaults. Copy route assignments. What that means is, so if Mary took a trip last Monday and she was on run 1, then if she's taking another trip this Monday, the same time and locations, typically subscriptions, then I want that to go on run 1 again. So that saves me redoing all that scheduling time. And then copy pickup and drop off times. When you're grouping trips together, you may have, moved up and down the pickup times. And if you do this, it'll copy those rather than reset everything to their original trip times. So we're getting something from, can everyone hear me? I think Gina said we're, okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and build this date. All right. So we can see, since I copied from previous, a lot of my days are already scheduled. These are, in this database, a lot of these are reoccurring rides. But since last Monday, Brett went on run 1, Brett's going to be on run 1 this Monday. So you've already got a lot of that taken care of. That kind of gets you ahead on having to do things over and over. Let me see. Okay, so then we have our right-click auto-scheduling feature. So we went ahead and copied everyone over. We still have about 5 trips that are new for this Monday that didn't go last Monday. So I want to use this auto-schedule feature to see what my options are. And I can, I right-clicked. And I'm not sure everyone knows this, but almost anywhere on the scheduling canvas, you can right-click and you'll have a number of options here. You can cancel, no-go, you can bring up the trip record, you can print a trip receipt. I'll kind of go over that later. But one of those is auto-schedule. And what that's going to do is go through, it takes this trip, it goes through all our routes and checks which ones would be able to perform this trip. And then it ranks them kind of in the order of what it would recommend. So I can look at, it's recommending route 3, and I can click on that, or run 3. And it's really cool. It shows me, at 11:54, they're dropping off at Advantage, and it's 3 miles from that to pick her up. We can then go drop her off and then continue on to my next stop. And kind of their distance, and how long it'll take from the previous stop and then back to my, the stop that's already on the route. Then if I say for some reason, I know this client and this driver don't get along, I want to put them with someone else, I can click on that and see, hey, okay, here's another option. This one, I actually like this better. So, I can just say insert trip, and there, that one's scheduled. So I really like the right-click auto scheduling. That you get the power, you can see how it fits on the route. You can see your distances from where they're at before and where they're at after. And if you don't like the options, you can just cancel and manually schedule it like you would have. Let's see. Our verify on route view, above each route, the top right button, is verify. And what if I bring this up, it puts it in what we call stops view. So this is what your driver really does. When we're looking at the scheduling canvas, we're looking at trips. Here we're looking at stops. So at 7:44, we're going to pick up Brett at 2531 Schaeff Drive. And if you look at the right, for you that kind of go to different cities, it's real easy to see city to city. I'm going Columbus to Columbus, then Ghana, then Columbus, etc. But the cool thing about this is when I did expand all when I first brought that up. I kind of skipped over that, but if I hit expand all, I can see, it'll tell me the distance and the duration from stop to stop. So looking at this, I can see, okay, from 7:44 to 7:57, it says it's about 10 minutes, 5 miles. Okay, that looks good. That makes sense. Takes about 16 minutes here. So if you're scheduling things kind of manually, this is a real good, double check when you're done. I can bring this up, look through it, make sure I'm not, telling that driver to be 2 places he can't be at once. So this is a real useful kind of after the fact. And a lot of times I like to, when we calculate trip times, we do it to the minute. A lot of our drivers, we might round these off a little bit. So this makes that kind of easy too. I can kind of go through while I'm looking at it and round those off. So that is the verify. We also, with our auto scheduling, some of you that are pretty spread out, we have what's called zones. We may in the future do, that's kind of could be its own subject for a whole webinar, but what zones, basically, like some of you that go to different cities, you might have a vehicle that sits up and works in Whitehall. And then you have 4 or 5 vehicles that handle Columbus. Then a couple more that handle a different city. You can set up geographic zones, and then for each route, I can here assign it to be a particular zone. So if I say this said Columbus, then this particular route would only get auto scheduled to it things that started and ended in Columbus. So that kind of keeps your vehicles for, if you don't want to bring someone from another town to do a trip, that kind of keeps it from doing that. So zones are very useful, especially for, your people who take things out of town, etc.
That makes a lot of sense, Brett. Thanks for that, and I look forward to the future webinar about zones. Gina from St. Francis has noticed several new features and would like a quick rundown of the new features and how they work. Brett, you want to talk about some of the new ParaPlan features?
Sure. Okay. One of them, we added this a while ago, but as I'm talking to people, I realize sometimes they don't know about it. So with one-way, a 3-legged trip, we used to have to put in a one-way, then come back to the client, put in another one-way, and it was kind of a, monotonous process. To now, what we can do is we'll put in a one-way trip, and when I change this to one-way, notice by the cancel here, I get a new link to create next leg. So I'm just going to find a place here. We'll say they're going to the YMCA. So I fill out all this information. And when I say create next leg, it's going to have me save that record. But what it does is it's going to, now I'm going from YMCA to my next place. And if it was a subscription set to like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that would carry over. Basically everything that's going to be the same will carry over. And now I can just say, okay, at 9 o'clock, I'm going to go from the YMCA to somewhere else, the Ohio Clinic. And then from there, I'm going to go home at 10. So that used to be a lot more time consuming. Now you can pretty quickly put all 3 of those trips in. If we look at it, it'll show, yeah, I've got my 3 trips. So let me see. We also have a new feature. Some of you have people who might change schedules every week. They're kind of like subscriptions, but they're not set days of the week. some of you transport people to work, and their work schedule may, differ week to week. So they'll like call in on Friday and say, hey, next week I'm working Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday. You used to have to create a number of those. Now you can hold your control button down and pick, well, I got a new keyboard. You can hold your shift button down or your control and single select things with your control or shift and select everything between the 2 clicks. And then when I go ahead and fill out the rest of the information, what that's going to do is create appointments for each of those days. So we might work at the YMCA. We need to go to work at 8 and we get back at 9. Not a great example, but now we can see when I save this, it actually created appointments for each of these days. So if I refresh that, I didn't have to enter 4 separate appointments. I just did it all at once. Let's see. Okay. In dispatch view, we have 2 views in scheduling. The route view is kind of drag and drop one trip at a time. Dispatch view has some more powerful features where we can filter for different things. And we used to, some of you that have different kind of zones, we put a naming convention to your programs so that, one set of schedulers can look at one group of programs and another. You used to be able to just filter for a particular program. I've recently put a negative filter in there. So say I want to look at everything, but I don't want to look at senior options. Someone else is going to schedule those. I can do that. Then I also don't want to look at cancer clinic. So these can build on each other and, remove the different programs you don't want to see. And then as we, like any of our filters, they kind of go up here. And whenever I'm done with them, I just hit the X and get rid of them. So that gets me back to everything. So I like that feature. We can now email reports. When you guys are running reports, you probably noticed this new button down here that says email. Basically, I set the parameters I want. You used to have to create a PDF, then save it to your hard drive, then go to your email, etc. Now I can just do that, type in the email address I want to go to and send it, and it'll basically create the PDF and email it to them. So that's a little time saver we added recently. I've added quite a few new reports and manifests lately. One is in the right-click menu, a trip receipt. We had a lot of people just, hey, I want to print out all the information for this one trip. So on the scheduling canvas, I can right-click on it and print trip receipt. And it basically just, it's a 1-page with information, tells you if it's a subscription, what days of the week it runs, etc. All the information you need for that one particular trip if you need to report on it separately for some reason. There's a number of new manifests in here. A lot of reports you just want to run on today, and I've been adding them in here as manifests. One is a trip stream report. So if you want to print out your trip streams, just come to your manifest printer and pull it down and change it to trip streams. And this will basically go through each trip and give you the trip stream. And it takes out all the downloaded to the phones for you who use mobile. So you just kind of get the scheduling information on it. So that one's kind of cool. We added some route lists. We've always had these quick lists over in the sidebar there, or the taskbar. Some people have asked for more condensed versions of those. So like there's a Safe Wheels route list that you might try. If you bring that up, it's just a real condensed, here's a name, a phone number, where they're being picked up, where they're dropping off, are they in a wheelchair. And this one's grouped by, which run it's on. There's another one right next to it that is a trip list. So this is basically the same thing sorted differently. So in this case, it's all the trips sorted by time and the routes in the next column, but just kind of a simple list. Some people still like to print out something to have next to the dispatcher during the day. This is a good, quick, give you the info you need kind of report there. Let's see, a couple in the reports menu. And this is another thing that would help with being efficient in your schedules. If I go to the route gaps report, what this basically does is I tell it, what size of gap I'm looking for. It's going to look for openings on a vehicle where I could probably fit someone else to do another trip. So I'm going to change this to today and view it as a PDF. So what that's done is it's looked through all the trips on route run 2, and it sees, okay, from 11:57 to 2 o'clock, this route doesn't have any trips on it. At 11:57, it's going to be at this address, and then at 2 o'clock, it needs to be at this address, and the distance between the two. But this shows me, hey, if I get a trip in that area, I can probably fit it on that route. So you can adjust those times. That could be a lunch break, but this one you may want to get something into. So it's set to 30 minutes by default. If you're looking for bigger gaps, you can change that. So that one's pretty cool. This route stops one is new. Let me do the 7th on that. And what it basically does is it goes through the runs and shows you, the green means they're ambulatory and red means they're in a wheelchair. And it's basically at each stop, and you can see over here, your how many wheelchair seats you have left as you load and unload each of these people. So basically saying 920 pickup, Alexander, here's his phone number, address. This vehicle can hold 2 ambulatory and 1 wheelchair. So once he's on there, I can only hold 1 ambulatory. And then the next stop he gets off, I'm back to 2. Then a wheelchair gets on, so now I don't have space for another one, even though in my demo data I put 2 on there, so someone's standing. But yeah, that can be a good report to kind of check capacities and make sure everything looks good on your schedules.
That's great. That's a lot of new information. Thanks, Brett. We have a few more minutes left, so if anyone wants to submit any questions that we can answer now or answer offline or answer our next webinar, there's a chat button that you can use to submit questions to. While we're waiting for any questions, Brett, let's say we got a rider on the line and they need some information about an upcoming trip, or they want to book a ride. What's the quickest way to pull up their information?
Okay. So I think a lot of from training, I teach you anytime you're going to do anything to do with a person, first things to bring up their client. And I think most people are aware this search, does the names, like I can do any part of a name. So if I do Alex, I'm going to get anything that contains Alex. But this is also searching addresses, phone numbers, all kinds of stuff. So if I know the person's phone number, I could start typing that and hit enter. And this is, you can see these people have that same prefix to their phone number. I could search by an address if I know what address they are at. I can do that and bring them up that way. And another one, let's see, let me get a good example. You can also do like parts of names. So if I do like Key Bradley, it'll narrow it down. If there was a number of Keegans, it knows when you put a space to look at their last name. So that one's kind of cool too. I think we got a couple questions here.
So great, that makes a lot of sense, Brett. We got just time for a little bit longer here. So let's make this our last question. Can you talk a little bit about a callback or a will call and how they're treated differently from normal trips in the system?
Okay. Yeah, with okay, what we have is that's a different trip type. So let me see, Miranda. Let me bring up one of these clients. And when I take a reservation for them, one of my trip types here is I have a one-way, a round trip, and then a round trip where I'm going to call for return. And what we're going to do then is whatever day we pick, it's going to create the outgoing leg, and then the return ride is going to sit in our callback list. So the day of, we're dispatching, someone calls in, say, hey, I'm finished at the doctor's, I'm ready to come back home. We can bring up the callback list, pick them, and then it'll default to the next 5 minutes for the trip time, but you can modify that. If I already know what route I want to put it on, I can use this right here and then basically activate it. And what that's going to do is create the return trip and go ahead and put it on the route I selected. So there's a couple other ways. Some people will estimate times if they don't live dispatch. They'll go ahead and, even though it's a callback, they may, say an hour from, it'll be about an hour and go ahead and put it in there as a round trip. Some people will use blank times if you pre-assign your callbacks to a certain vehicle. You can go ahead and leave the return time blank, and then you can go ahead and schedule it because it's created the trip at that point. And so those are the different ways. If you live dispatch, this callbacks feature, though, is really cool. So,
all right, thanks a ton, Brett. That was awesome. I know we just run out of time, everybody. I know we've got some questions that have popped up. We will either reply to those privately to you guys or add them to our next webinar. And from all of us, thank you so much for attending in this series of more to come. And as I previously stated, we'll be sending a link to the recording of this webinar for you to view again. And please let us know at any time, email any of us if you have thoughts about the webinar and what you thought about it, and any topics or questions you have for now or later in our series. So thanks again for being users of ParaPlan, and we appreciate you guys. So till next time, thanks.